Good morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told out of Voice of Radio, so today we need to take a good old look at one of the weirdest decks that I've seen in a while, a deck that I am willing to bet you didn't see coming, because I didn't see it coming either. It's all to do with, it's all based around, it's all because of, the main attacker is Rabsca EX? Now, I'd forgive you guys if you'd forgotten that Rabsca EX was even a thing. Rabsca EX is basically the newest gym promo over in Japan. Every time a new set releases over in Japan, a new main set, not an A set, it has to be a main set, they get a new promo pack, and this time around the new promo pack was Rabsca. And apparently, somebody's gone and done a win with Rabsca. Now, I'm not going to go and pretend this is now the best deck in the format. And I'm not going to pretend like it is some kind of absolute powerhouse that's going to win everything. But I absolutely am going to tell you that this is a deck that is on nobody's radar. It has gone and done a win, so there is at least a chance that this could be very good. And it's something we need to take seriously and have a little bit of a chat about. So let's go and do that, shall we? Excellent. Now, what we got here is a 250 HP Stage 1 Grass Pokemon. Fine. Although we do have a couple of others we'll get to in a minute. And we got ourselves two attacks. We got Single Energy, draw 3 cards, which I actually really like. I just don't like it on a Stage 1, because you go first, your opponent has a turn, you draw 3 cards, and then they can evolve an attack and all of that, and that seems awkward. I should also actually mention that this is 3 cards from the bottom of your deck. So it's actually potentially sneaky good after, say, an INO. If you know the cards you need have been put to the bottom of your deck with an INO, you can actually use this to go and get those bottom cards, which is kind of cool. Most of the time in the early game, it makes no difference whether you're drawing from the top or bottom of your deck, because you don't know where the cards are in there anyway. But after an INO, this actually could be, if you need to take a turn to regroup, and you know what you need on the bottom of your deck, and you use that regrouping turn to guarantee drawing it with this, I'm just saying that could be fun. But then we got free energy, 20 damage, plus 90 damage for each energy attached to your opponent's active Pokemon. And here's where it gets a little bit interesting. Here is a look, according to Pokécard Book over on Twitter, who are pretty good at this, here is a look at the current Japanese metagame. You may notice there is exactly one deck in Tier 1. The best deck, by a bit of a margin, is Charizard, isn't it? And if you've got a very good Charizard matchup, then you are going to be in for a pretty nice time. Here, Charizard's got 2 energy on, so you do 180, plus 20 base is 200, times by 2 is 400. Yeah, I feel like 400 damage is probably going to be enough here. Yes, you're probably going to be using double turbo energy and you'll be reducing it down by 20. Nobody cares, because you're still doing 360. That would be 180 times by 2. And that is more than enough to go and take down this Charizard. And it'll work against a bunch of other things, don't get me wrong. You'll be 2-hit KOing a bunch. Or will you? Let's say you're up against Regidrago. Well, they're generally going to need free energy attached in order to attack. So that's 9, 18, 20, 270 plus a 20 base, 200. Oh, that's 290. Regidrago has 280. Now here, actually using double turbo would be devastating, because you would then be 10 damage short, and that would be terrible. But actually, the second best deck in the format right now is Regidrago. And you're actually getting a 1-hit KO on Regidrago quite nicely as well, which seems like a little bit of a win. Is it going to work against everything? No, honestly. You know, take something like Raging Bolt. Firstly, they're a 2-energy attacker. You'll hit for 200 and be a little bit short, gosh darn it. But then also they can discard the energy from themselves when they attack. So actually, if they're worried about being in range, they can literally leave a 0-energy attacker in the active. They'll have to get the energy back, and that'll be a pain and all of that. But my point is, they can just literally lower the energy on them, and that is going to be a a bit of an issue, frankly. So I'm not arguing phenomenal matchups against everything, not arguing that at all, but I am saying it's got some very good ones. You know, take a look at some other top decks. Look at Lugia. Well, Lugia itself is a 4 energy attacker, and I know your opponent's not always attacking with Lugia, I understand that, but sometimes in the early game when they've got no other options, Lugia's the attacker. 4 energy on a Lugia? Yeah, mate. That'll do quite nicely indeed. And obviously, you know, again, not necessarily the best attackers against this, but something like Iron Hands, for instance, is going to have 4 energy on a lot of the time, or 3 is honestly enough anyway, so you'll be getting them. I'm saying we've got a lot of decks around right now. You know, take Gardevoir. Gardevoir is a deck that basically has one plan, which is, let's put as much energy on the board as we possibly can. Well, that's playing right into your hands. There are going to be some pretty bad matchups. Things like Raging Bolt seems like a terrible matchup here because they can get rid of their energy and then bring it back and all of that. But of the 5 top decks on this graphic, it really does feel like 4 of them are at least winnable. One of them is very favourable, and that's by far the best. As you go down, things like Dragapult and Golden Go again, they exist with low energy. Those are awkward matchups, but they are also a little bit lower down the list. So that's Rabsca and Rabsca's attack and why Rabsca's attack might be good. What else do we see from the deck that we might be having an advantage with? Well, there's actually 2 other Rabsca here that we are playing as one-offs to give ourselves some other options. Rabsca and Rabsca EX, remember, have different names, so you can play them in conjunction, and this can help massively. We've got the one that came around for us in Temporal Forces. The ability says prevent all damage from and effects of attacks from your opponent's Pokemon done to your benched Pokemon. Yeah, that's going to help. You know, let's say you're playing against Dragapult here. Well, all of a sudden, they're not dropping damage counters onto the bench. They can't drop damage counters onto the bench. That is a huge advantage for you. And now we go back and say, well, you're probably not one-hit KOing Dragapult. Well, they're not one-hit KOing you. If all they're doing is 200 to the active, that's not enough to get a one-hit KO on you. And if they're not able to drop damage counters onto the bench, which is like their secret weapon, maybe Dragapult's not such a terrible matchup because you're protecting against the damage counters. So they're hitting 200. If they've got 2 energy on, you're hitting 200. Except you're a stage 1 and they're a stage 2. Maybe this has got much better matchups than we were considering. Except against Raging Bolt. I really don't see how this beats Raging Bolt. But other than that, I'm not hating the matchup spread. There is actually one more Rabsca that we are going to be playing around with here. It's the brand new one from Surging Sparks. And this is one where single energy, 40 damage. If there are 3 or fewer cards in your deck, it does 240. So now, not only have you got this actually sneaky, very good attacker, but it's also got a really nice single energy attacker in the late game that is also a single prize attacker. Single prize, single energy, 240. Get late in the game and this can be absolutely legit. The deck also plays Cricketune, a 1-1 line of Cricketune, because of course it does. Why would it not play a 1-1 line of Cricketune? Specifically here, it's the one that came around in Astral Radiance that actually gives all of your other grass Pokemon 40 more HP. It doesn't stack. It's only 40 more. But actually, yeah. All of a sudden, you've now got 290 HP on your EX. And all of a sudden, you kind of start to see how this deck is coming together. You are now making it awkward for your opponent to hit the numbers, while actually having a pretty sneaky, decent matchup spread against a lot of the top decks around in the meta. Now, because of the energy cost here, it is important that we get the energy on. I've already mentioned Double Turbo, which isn't ideal but will work. We're also playing the whole Teal Mask Ogapon energy switch thing, which shouldn't really surprise anyone. Teal Mask Ogapon energy switch has become a thing in a lot of decks. That is what we're seeing here as well. It's just a way to guarantee we're getting that energy. Combine it with double turbo, it helps a lot. And while we're talking about combining, we're also playing counter gain here. Just the one counter gain, but still. And that means that we are able to, if we're behind on prizes at least, reduce the attack cost by 1 energy. So now it's just essentially 2 grass, which actually is going to help quite a bit as well. So I'm just saying there is significant cause for optimism here. Elsewhere in the deck, there are a few other cards to which I need to bring your attention. Obviously, Bug Catching Set is nuts in this deck because it lets you go and search for a grass Pokemon or a grass energy. And this is a grass deck. So that's clearly absolutely brilliant. What it actually does is it lets you look at the top 7 cards of your deck and grab 2 in any combination of grass Pokemon and basic grass energy. It's a great card for grass decks. We don't see it too much because there actually aren't that many grass decks around at the moment. There's decks playing grass energy, dragon decks, but in terms of actual grass decks, there aren't that many around. But all the ones that there are, Bug Catching Set becomes like your best friend. And in terms of your ace spec here, we're going for Unfair Stamp. This is a kind of deck that can take a little bit of setting up. So you need to make sure that you've got a little bit of time. And just having Unfair Stamp just gives you another win con here. Your opponent takes a KO, you play this, they go down to 2 cards left in hand. And then from there, you can start bringing it back, hitting decent damage, and overwhelming them from there. Plus, obviously, with that combination of the Rabsca that gives you protection on the bench and the Kricketune that gives you extra HP, you've got a decent amount of survivability built in with this deck. You're going to be able to protect yourself against a bunch of things, and I like this. Here's the list as a whole, and there's a lot of things you're expecting to see here. Squawkabilly and Pheasantdipty, single counter, catcher for if you're behind on prizes, all that good stuff. There's actually 1 copy of Briar. Now, in order to use Briar, you have to take a KO with your Teal Mask Gogapon. But if you do, then you get to take an extra prize as long as your opponent had 2 prizes remaining when you played Briar. My point, and then of course you take out a single prize Pokemon with your Teal Mask Gogapon, and that's your final 2 prizes, hopefully. Hopefully. Or maybe even your final 3. My point here is that this is a deck that has not been on anybody, and I feel very confident saying, literally not been on anybody's radar. And yet, I've seen it go and win in Japan. And I've sat down and had a good old think about this. And I really do think this deck is so much better than people are giving it credit for. It's very much a meta call at the moment. And I still cannot see how it beats Raging Bolt. Although, fun little side note, Kricketune actually makes that matchup a little more bearable because generally they have to discard 4 energy to do 280 to KO your Rabsca. Well, now they discard 4 energy, they do 280, Kricketunes actually put you up to 290, so they do have to discard a 5th energy to go to 350. Maybe you can try and run them out of resources. I don't know when this Rabsca is coming out in the West. I don't know when we're getting an English version of it. Generally, we have to wait a little bit longer for these promos than we do for other things. But when it does come out, I really do think this one could be an awful lot of fun. Let me know what you think in the comment section. Go nuts! Be nice! And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at the Wasi. That's where we talk about Pokemon and a whole bunch of other card games. And please do consider checking out patreon.com/PTCG Radio, where you can support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all kinds of fun things. But by far the most important thing as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.